important is a child's place on the family tree? I mean, does birth order really play a role in our kids' development? Well, here to talk about the power of birth order is Parents Magazine executive editor, right, Chandra Turner. She is joining us. There's the current issue of Parents has a really excellent article about this, because of course every time there's some research, my brother, who's the eldest, calls and says, you see, I have a higher IQ, and then I say, yeah, but I don't know that you're earning more than I am at this point. But that is one of the things that you say about firstborns, that they do tend to be ambitious.
More ambitious. They do tend to earn more money. They're more likely to earn $100,000 or more compared to the other siblings in the family. They tend to be type A personalities, go-getters.
Right.
A lot of famous people are firstborns.
Yeah.
Being a firstborn is the key to success. Just don't tell anybody else that.
Are you a firstborn by any chance?
I am a firstborn, but I also have a lot of traits of being an only, and that's why birth order can be kind of complicated, because you have stepchildren and there are a lot of breaks in families. So it is complicated but very fascinating science.
It is really fascinating. I mean, one of the other things is this issue of taking on a lot of responsibility. You have a big job. You kind of ran over here cramming a lot of things in between. And I think that is something with children who are the firstborn. So what are some of the ways that you can actually help a firstborn, both excel but also recognize that they may be vulnerable to certain kinds of behavior?
Right. Being a type A personality puts a lot of pressure on a child. They're always trying to be perfect. They have the perfectionist disease, so you have to try to tell them, listen, you can make mistakes, it's okay. And so as a parent, whether you're a firstborn yourself or not, you need to show your child that it's okay to fail sometimes. You don't always have to be perfect. So admit your own mistakes, own up to them, and let your children see that.
That's great. And then let's now jump to the youngest children, because I'm most interested in that. We're charming, social, outgoing. You say that they're a little bit more risk takers. Again, this is part of the wanting to be paid attention to, perhaps.
Yes.
They often feel their achievements aren't appreciated. I think that's a really important point. I mean, that everybody's done it before.
Everybody's done it before them. Everybody's hit the milestones before. Parents give 3,000 more minutes to the firstborn than they do between the ages, or hours between the ages of 4 and 13. Right. So they're getting a lot more attention, and the baby doesn't get as much attention because it's not as exciting the second time around. So you just need to give that attention to the child without them trying to give it to you constantly.
Right.
You also can't let that baby off the hook. The baby tends to get away with everything. So give the rules just the same to the baby as you do to the big kids in the family.
Right. That's actually a really good point. I mean, although I have to say, I felt like I was the slave to my older siblings. And when I spent time with my husband, and he's the oldest and I'm the baby, and I watched how he didn't order me around, but he ordered his siblings around. I was kind of stunned. Then they're middle children, and they tend to be obviously the negotiators. They're really
the middlemen.
The middlemen. But they have very strong friendships, so they tend to be good at forming relationships, I guess, up and down in terms of the age spectrum.
Right.
And you say they in some ways get the least attention, or they get less attention because they're in between.
Yes. Parents actually admit to giving less attention. A third of parents say that they do give less attention to the middle child because it kind of gets stuck in the middle. So you need to go out of your way to make sure that child does get attention. Let them make some of the decision. What are we going to have for dinner tonight? Where are we going to go to the movies? Give them some power in the family when they normally don't get any.
Right, exactly. I think, the other thing, like you touched a little bit on only children, that they do tend to be ambitious. They used to get a sort of bum rap, the poor, sad only children, but that's actually not something that's been backed up with research at all.
Right. There's been a lot of talk recently about how only children, and for the economy, people are only having one child these days, and they're perfectly successful and happy children, a lot more than we thought they would be. Right. The only problem is they tend not to have relationship with the other children as much. So you have to make sure that they get involved in team sports, that they are involved in extracurricular activities, so they have relationships with peers and kids their own age and not just with adults.
Right. Really good advice. And multiples, let's just end with those two, because I certainly see a lot more twins out there than I ever did before.
Yes.
You point to the fact that they often develop their own little world, their own language, and that is both good and bad.
Yes.
And that they get lumped together, dressing them the same and so forth. So obviously establishing their unique personalities is important. What are some other things that
and make sure that they have their own passions, their own activities, that they are not referred to as the twins. So you don't call them the twins. You don't let other people call them the twins. They are Annabelle and Estelle, as my best friend's girls are. Right. and just to make sure that you recognize their own individual preferences, and they should have them, and you need to make sure that those are paid attention to.
Right.
Yeah.
What I was thinking in terms of the takeaway from the piece, which I really enjoyed. I mean, one of the things, it gets back to something you've also touched on in the magazine, which is the risk of labels that particularly for something like only children or twins, or that you have to be very aware that you are singling out. I mean, no matter where your kid is in the family tree, their unique skills, be aware of their vulnerabilities. Are there other takeaways? I mean, as a mom that this piece made you aware of?
Yeah, just be very careful that you're not boxing your children in. That because he's the only, he can't do this. Well, certainly your oldest could do that. So why can't the only child do that?
Right.
And just saying it out loud a lot, you'll catch yourself. I'll say, "Oh, my son will do anything. Oh, he'll jump right off the jungle gym." But then yesterday I brought him into the office and he was shy, and suddenly he wasn't the stereotypical younger child that likes to always get the attention. And this is not typical of his personality. So I was, kind of making him, the stereotype that he wasn't. So you just need to be really careful that you're not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing I would add is you mentioned this, that if you're the eldest. I mean, I was saying that my husband's the eldest, I'm the baby in my family and in his family respectively, and that actually played out in terms of who we identified with. We only have two,
right?
And there was no question that Steve sometimes sided with Maddie because he really understood what it felt like to have a younger sibling who was sort of stepping on her parade or trying to compete. And I was the other way. Whenever Maddie picked on Nick, I was really quick to jump in there.
Well, that's good. That's perfect.
Him. Yes, but I think we have to be careful that we are aware of our own place in our own families. But lots of really, really good advice. So
thank you.
Be sure to pick up the current issue of Parents Magazine, my old haunting grounds. And thank you, Chanda, for joining us.